What if I told you the best way to win tax season actually starts before January 1st? See, most people want to wait until March to get their books together, and by that point, it's too late in the game. You're stressed, you're disorganized, and you're probably overpaying Uncle Sam. But not this year. This is where it can change for you. In today's episode, I'm going to break down what you need to do right now to get ahead of the IRS, maximize your deductions, and walk into a game plan that keeps your money where it belongs, in your pocket. Welcome back to Millennial Gems, the show where we talk money, mindset, entrepreneurship, and moves that build generational wealth. I am your host, Akila, and today's episode is called Tax Season Game Plan. So let's get into it. Now, first thing I want to address is, if you don't already know, we're now in Q4. And Q4 is where it all happens, right? So Q4 is October all the way through December. And that's what your tax bill looks like when you file in 2025. Sorry. October through December determines what your tax bill will look like in 2025. See, most people will try to treat tax season like it's a one-time event. But what I've learned over the past couple years is that the most successful entrepreneurs treat it like a year-round strategy. You know, they're making the moves you make right now, you know, how you spend, how you save, how you organize. Those are the things that determine whether you're writing a check to the IRS or you're going to get one from them later. For all my W-2 employees, you know, taxes are pretty automatic. Your job handles, you know, taking out the withholdings. But for entrepreneurs, for freelancers, side hustlers, it's on you to do the planning. So let's be honest. Here's just a real, harsh truth. Like, the tax code isn't written for the unprepared. It's written for the strategic. So as you navigate through Q4, you should have your mindset set on, let me position myself to pay less later rather than, you know what, I'll just deal with it later. That's the game. Learn the tax code and learn the game. So, next thing we're going to get into is some deadlines. Because missing one of these deadlines is going to probably cost you a lot of bread. So if you don't know, January 15th of every year, this is when the Q4 estimated tax payments are due. And so whether you're self-employed or, you have 1099 income, Q4 payments are due the 15th of January at the top of every new year. Now, the 31st of January, about 16 days later, that's when all employers, every single business, if you have employees, has to send out all of their 1099s and W-2s. They all have to be sent out at that time. And then the last date, the big one, the date that we should always remember and never forget, April 15th. That is the tax filing deadline. That is when you need to have it done. Unless you elect to file for an extension. But April 15th is the due date. So you're probably asking, maybe some of you might be new to this and probably asking, why does this matter? Well, if you get ahead of these dates today, you can plan instead of panic. You know, I'm not a person, who's big on waiting till, last minute to try to get things done. I want to be as far ahead as possible. I want to be able to take advantage of as much as I can and kind of understand the game, understand the rules, and just position myself as best as possible for, when it's showtime. You got to understand, like, When it comes to entrepreneurship, like knowledge is money. Tax season, knowledge is money. You want to make sure you're staying ahead of these dates. That's the first power move of tax season. Understand what the dates are and stay ahead of it. Matter of fact, if you're listening to this, put those dates in your calendar right now. If you're not too familiar with tax season and stuff. Remember, January 15th, if you have Q4 estimated tax payments, and January 31st, if you're a business owner, to make sure you have all your 1099s and W-2s, and April 15th. You make sure you got that one. It's definitely in your phone because that is when your taxes are due. All right, so the next thing we're going to get into will be about kind of how to organize your records. Because half the stress around tax season comes from not being organized. So, in the preseason, which I would like to consider right now in October all the way to December, the preseason, you should gather any income statements, things like invoices, 1099s, W-2s. If you have any expense receipts, all my business owners who, want to deduct business meals, any software you use, any business travel, any equipment, make sure you got the receipts on deck. You want to have your bank and credit card statements on deck. If you're a person who drives a lot and charges for traveling, then, make sure you had your mileage logs and your home office records if you work in your home in a section of your house. My recommendation would be to definitely have a tax season folder. Whether you want to do it, have a digital copy or a physical copy, really doesn't matter. You just want to make sure you're keeping everything in one place. If most of you don't know, I'm a bookkeeper as well. So I use bookkeeping software, like QuickBooks, to, make sure that my all my transactions are organized, and I make sure to keep my books clean at all times, and that, just means everything's categorized and everything is reconciled. And I just make sure everything is up to date. So, don't play yourself and wait until like February to realize that, half your receipts are sitting in your email and the other half are in the car. Like, just don't play yourself. Like, is curious. Is anybody still doing their books manually? Like, you know what? Forget it. If you are doing your books manually, then this is your sign to stop, because this episode is brought to you by Millennial Gems Financial Solutions. Okay, so we help business owners stay organized year round with bookkeeping and during tax season. Like, we want to make sure that, when you meet with us, that this is not a rescue mission. We want to make sure this is a review. Because when your books are clean, taxes are easy. All right. So next thing we're going to get into is making sure you know your numbers before you file. Believe me, this is kind of the first time I'm doing tax preparation. But, I understand, it can be over. Let's be real. Tax season doesn't start in January. It starts when you get serious about your money. At Millennial Gems Financial Solutions, we help self-employed hustlers, entrepreneurs, business owners stay ready year round. Whether it's clean bookkeeping, tax prep, or setting up systems so you can finally understand your numbers, our goal is simple. Provide clarity, protect your peace of mind, and help you keep more of what you make. You've worked too hard to give Uncle Sam more than you owe. So let's fix that. Visit millennialgemsbk.com to book your consultation today. overwhelming, but you can estimate your position right now. So if for all my business owners, all my self-employed people, pull up your P&L statement. That's your profit and loss statement if you don't know. You want to look at your total income and look at your expenses. Then you want to try to get a rough estimate of how much you might owe based on last year's rate. So if you're looking at your numbers now, you can make a strategic adjustment before, December 31st. Instead of like waiting until April, if you need to prepay a few vendor expenses, purchase new inventory, or make an extra SEP IRA contribution, guess what? Do that. Planning ahead is how you keep your money. That's what I've kind of learned being in entrepreneurship, kind of like the last 3 years, is you have to plan ahead in order to keep your money, because it doesn't matter how much money you make. The fact is, how do you keep it? That's the main goal. How do you keep your money? All right. Next thing we're going to get into is, making smarter moves before the 31st. So here are some things you can do before, the end of the year to help lower your bill. As I kind of just literally just mentioned, make sure you prepay any expenses. If you know you need something for your business in January, get it in December and you'll get the deduction for this year. You need to contribute any more money to your IRA, your SEP IRA, your 401k, your traditional IRA, any of these, retirement accounts. All of these help reduce your taxable income. If you're gonna make any charitable donations, whether it's through cash, goods, or even stock contributions, they all count. And then if you do have health savings accounts or, HSA, FSA contributions, those are also can give you tax advantages as well. And of course, by all means, the one thing you always want to do is track everything. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that earlier. Keep your receipts. Track everything. You don't want to let deductions fall through the cracks because, you decided not to document them. As I said earlier, the tax code does not benefit those who are unprepared. The tax code will reward those who are intentional in being strategic. The 31st of December is your finish line. Everything after that is just cleanup. All right, so the next thing we're going to get into is how to avoid some tax season mistakes. So let's talk about what you are not going to do. What you're not going to do is you're not going to wait until February or March to try to get yourself organized or get started. What you're not going to do is mix personal and business finances. Ever. Never, ever, 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 ever mix personal and business expenses together. Don't play yourself. Don't have the IRS. Don't give them a reason to come knocking at your door. Not hiring help until the last minute. If you need assistance in your business, just hire the help. Just hire the help. Don't forget to make your quarterly payments. If you anticipate making over $1,000 or owing over $1,000, then make sure you got your dates down for when them quarterly payments are due. And then obviously losing deductions because you can't prove them. That's why I say track everything. So that way, if you need to refer back to it, should the audit come around, you'll have the evidence there to help you prove that you took the deductions or that it's valid. You know, I get it. You know, tax season can be stressful. Like, again, like this is the first year that I'm going to be doing my own taxes. And also, again, like I said, taking on other people's taxes as well. And, you know, it doesn't have to be, you know, I've kind of learned over the last like 2 years, you know, that I've been doing mine. Like I said, it doesn't have to be stressful. Things only get stressful when you try to cram a year of chaos into 1 month of paperwork. I'm telling you, don't play yourself. Stay organized. Stay ahead. If you're not you know, sure what to do, get help early. As I said, my company, like, that's what we're here for. That. If you need help organizing your QuickBooks or anything like that, we got you. We can take care of you. Tax strategy, we can help you with that. We're here to be assistance to you. All right. So one last thing I want to go over is kind of just how to build out, you know, your game plan for the remainder of this year. You know, I'm naming this episode the tax season game plan. So, you know, here's a step-by-step checklist that'll you can follow to kind of get yourself prepared for this season. So the first thing is I would schedule a bookkeeping cleanup before December. So if your books are just completely unorganized and just a mess, schedule that cleanup. Because organized books are going to make things very stressful, especially if you're trying to do it by yourself and you don't know what you're doing. Pay somebody to clean them up. Review your income and expense reports. Again, those profit and loss sheets, those balance sheets, you want to see all of that. Cash flow statements, review all of that stuff. Check to make sure you know when your estimated payments are and how much you need to make. Any big purchases or contributions, buy them before the year ends. And the last thing, set up a tax strategy meeting for early next year. These 5 moves right here will create big savings. You know, tax strategy isn't about paying less, at least from what I've understood. It's about building wealth intentionally. So, if you're ready to make this your easiest tax season yet, you know, I'll drop a link in the show notes to download my free tax prep checklist, and you know, use that to help kind of gather the materials you need for the tax seasons. Also, if you're tired of doing taxes alone, or you realize that, you know, your hustle, your business is getting bigger, it's growing and expanding, you know, you can book a consultation with Millennial Gems, my company, Millennial Gems Financial Solutions. Like I said, we do bookkeeping, we do tax season, we do tax strategy. You know, we're here to help. We'll clean up your books, we'll prepare you for tax season, build a strategy that actually works for you. Don't wait until January. Make sure you start today. All right. Until then, remember, preparation is wealth. You don't win tax season by filing. You win by planning. Catch y'all on the next one. Peace.